Welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia Baranovsky-Schneider, the podcast that takes you on a journey around the world to meet some of the most inspiring and accomplished individuals. Discover their stories, uncover invaluable business lessons from their paths to success, and gain exclusive insights on how to apply their strategies to elevate your life and business.
Hello, and welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia. I'm your host, Patty Baranowski-Schneider. Today, I'm joined by Adam Robertson, a DevOps leader, multi-cloud Kubernetes expert, thought leader, published author, speaker, consultant, and basically a jack of all trades. So welcome, Adam. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. So I've been in the DevOps space for years and years, recently transitioned to supporting more AI and ML ops as well, but mainly been in charge of managing our any company I'm currently involved with, their infrastructure and the architecture, design and implementation of the architecture. So this has been on gaming, finance, healthcare, and many verticals as well. So I've seen a lot, and the great byproduct of that is had to design lots of custom architecture. So
Very, way over my head, but awesome stuff. Now tell us, your book, Multi-Cloud Mastery, focuses on Kubernetes systems across different cloud environments. So what initially drew you to multi-cloud architecture, and how has your perspective evolved since writing the book?
I think AWS is the first cloud, and then others followed. And I think everyone in the industry kind of understands the problems that come with what we call vendor lock-in, which is essentially when you're so dependent on one service that it becomes problematic. The book goes into a lot of detail on this, but some examples are, if they don't have the resources available that you need, you're kind of just stuck and you can't provide for your engineering teams. Or if they have an outage, you are also stuck because all of your compute is based on their platform. And of course, you're subject to their cost changes. So if something is in high demand and they raise the cost, you're subject to that as well. So the attractiveness of multi-cloud is not only just mitigating those risks, but also increasing your global footprint. AWS has many regions that you can use, but when you combine multiple clouds, AWS, GCP plus Azure, you're able to kind of take the union of all of those locations and provide much more granularity to your end users, reducing your latency and increasing your general user experience. You can also kind of mitigate the cost. If one cloud is raising prices or doesn't have availability for a certain resource, you can very easily move over to another. Right. And the reason why Kubernetes is such an optimal platform for that is because it presents one unified front. It is the same no matter where you go. So you can have one container image. You can launch it on any cloud as long as that cloud is running Kubernetes, as well as run that same container image on your local machine, as well as your testing platforms and such. So it basically reduces operational overhead because at the base of it, you're not deploying to AWS or GCP or Azure, you're deploying to Kubernetes, and it's the same everywhere. So it's a game changer in terms of operational efficiency and ease for many DevOps and infrastructure support teams.
Well, no, it makes sense. I mean, obviously nowadays you don't want to be locked into one specific thing because that's where they get you, because now you're stuck, that prices go up and they could do whatever they want and you're kind of stuck there. So I agree 100%, have a variety. So now, as organizations run to adopt cloud-native technologies, what are the most dangerous pitfalls you see teams falling into when implementing Kubernetes in production environments?
I'd say a lack of planning. One of my favorite things to say is if I have 6 weeks to build a boat, I'll spend 5 weeks planning. Because if you do a good job of your due diligence, your research, understanding your requirements, understanding your scope, and truly understanding the problems that you're trying to solve, that takes a long time. And it should take a long time because it's comprehensive. And if you do a really thorough job at it, the execution is merely following steps. You've got a well-architected plan. You've got general buy-in from all your stakeholders to ensure that their requirements are being met. And you have the ability to essentially execute with a lot of confidence because you put in a lot of work. What I see from teams is they rush into it. They end up having to redo a lot of things, maybe even, and this is obviously a sensitive subject, but sometimes the just technical acumen of the team is not up to par. So they didn't invest in proper training for their team, or they don't have the proper experience. And so they're learning as they go. And that makes for slow execution and a lot of redoing of what you've already done. So I would say the biggest problem I see is just, inadequate preparation and planning.
Right. Definitely. I mean, like with anything, you definitely want to plan because I've seen just in anything in life, if someone just jumps into something without the proper planning, it's just a mess. I agree.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason I wrote the book is I had that experience when I first did this. Yeah, when I first did this, it was in 2020, and there wasn't a lot of organizations that have successfully done it. There are many that started and failed and just said this is too hard. So we had to, figure it out as we go. And the reason I wrote the book and part of the reason I offer consulting services now is to help with that process from someone who has experience.
Yeah, that actually makes or breaks everything because so many people, you could read anything in a book, but talking to someone who's been there, done that, it just makes all the difference because you could sit here and say, everything that could go wrong, like how to fix it, because books are only going to tell you so much, but having someone with the experience makes a big difference. So now you mentioned being passionate about challenging conventional approaches. So can you share a specific incident where going against the established wisdom led to a breakthrough for one of your clients?
Absolutely. When my team was tasked with, presenting a global compute, the research was done and saying it's too hard. And a lot of companies, very technically, advanced companies had tried it and pulled back. And the general consensus at the time was this is something that either the technology is not ready or what have you. And we said, you know what, we're going for it. And we did. And it was a considerable effort. It was indeed hard, but we were determined. And when we got complete and we had a global presence and it provided, 5 nines of uptime and just a great cost mitigation tool, and it worked. And that, the celebratory feeling after that and just the feeling of accomplishment from the team to do something that most companies just had classified as too hard was nostalgic. It was great. And so it's something, you carry with you forever.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that too. One, don't tell me I can't do something because now I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong. But also, I love the challenge, like especially if it's something like I always tell people, if I don't know how to do it, I guarantee you I'll figure it out because I love that challenge, especially trying to figure it out. Then it's just, no one's patting you on the back but yourself. It's like, oh, so rewarding. I actually did it. You get more faith in yourself too.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So now the term DevOps, it's evolved significantly over the years. So how do you define modern DevOps leadership in 2025? And what skills do you believe are the most critical for success in this space?
Absolutely. I think DevOps in practice has evolved, but DevOps as a definition has always been pretty well defined by a set of practices and principles. And no matter where I go, what company, what vertical, what space, adhering to those practices and principles really create the effects and have the results that were needed at the time of its invention. So DevOps is relatively new. It's obviously the mesh of development and operations, bringing them together to increase engineering efficiency, velocity, and high quality products. And it was developed because of the problem that existed with siloed teams. And that, those practices and principles are, collaboration, repeatable, infrastructure as code, all of these things, they remain steady. So whether or not you're doing ML ops, AI ops, platform engineering, or just pure DevOps, at the end of the day, you're still adhering to those practices and principles. Now, one of the things that is nice about those is you can apply them to anything. So as we, move to more AI infrastructure or supporting machine learning teams or moving the focus of our stuff farther to the right instead of the left to reduce cognitive load on engineers by doing more platform engineering, more tooling, the principles remain the same. And so if you adhere to them, you're generally going to get the results as intended. And I think that's one of the more beautiful things about it, because every company I've been to is different. Every vertical is different. Some you have compliance restraints. Some you have 600 engineers. Others you have 4, right? And so you have to be adaptive to that. But the core principles and practices stay the same throughout. They transcend all of that.
Okay. Yeah. It's actually funny because like I do marketing and I always say the same thing. People always say, well, how do you do marketing for this type of I say marketing's marketing. The only thing that changes is the story and who you're telling it to and where you're telling it. Other than that, so I totally get it. You want to have that, strict, universal, I guess, little practice. And then you just branch out from there, depending on what it is you're like you say, you're doing. Nice.
Absolutely. Yep.
Now, you're based in Colorado Springs, but you work with organizations globally. So how have regional differences in technology, adaptation, and culture impacted your consulting approach across the different markets?
That's an interesting question. So I actually spend most of my time in Boulder, which is only about an hour from Colorado Springs, but certainly love the central Colorado area. But you are right, it's not a tech hub. It's increasing over time. However, the virtual world is good. Most of the conferences I actually attend and speak at are virtual, and
Yes.
and yeah, everyone's kind of gotten used to that in the post-COVID world.
Right.
Still like to travel and go to conferences to have more of a direct connection with people, but so I actually I wouldn't say that there are regional differences in the technology because it's such a collaborative and vocal space. Everyone's writing articles, everyone's going to conferences, speaking, and that again transcends location. So when I gave a talk last Friday, and we had people from Tel Aviv, from Bulgaria, and Australia all on, right, different times, different parts of the world, all watching to kind of learn a little bit more about their craft. So I think, and I think a lot of people do a lot of good reading as well. And there's a lot of good publications out there that keep you up to speed. So I don't think there's regional differences. I do get a lot of messages on LinkedIn asking for coffee, and I'm like, not in San Francisco.
Virtual coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you can overcome that with a lot of ease. And I actually go to Silicon Valley every about once every 1 to 2 months and spend a week there just to be closer to kind of the ecosystem and go to my company headquarters and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, it is ironic, but like Zoom became the whole big thing, like after COVID and whatnot, but it has made the world so much easier. Like the expense of traveling, I get it, the connections and all that stuff, but if it could be done virtual, why not? And you could reach people across the entire world as opposed to just within a so many mile radius,
Absolutely. And then that's coming into play now with the whole return to work genre or fad or whatever you want to call it, movement. I'm a firm believer that as long as anyone on my team has a laptop and an internet connection, they're perfectly capable of satisfying their tasks. And, a lot of people disagree and think there's something that is missed from in person. And okay, there's something to that. But at the end of the day, your core, responsibilities, if they can be handled by a good internet connection, and you can most likely, do it from anywhere. So again, it's always in flight. It was really popular for a while, and then like Amazon and all the rest started calling people back. And it's interesting to see where that will go. I don't think we'll ever fully return to work because I think some people are just digging in their heels.
Right.
But
No, I've been remote long before COVID for like 20 years now. And ironically, I find that I'm way more productive from home because before you figure I had an hour and a half commute going to work, hour and a half commute coming home. That's 3 hours of wasted time that I couldn't do anything. Then when you're in the office, everyone's coming and talking to you. Oh, last night's date. Oh, did you see the show? Or let's go grab lunch. And so you have a lot of non-work time. And basically, when you're working from home, you're on call from the minute you roll out of bed to the minute you go to bed. And I can, shut my phone off and do whatever I have to do and not have 1,000 interruptions. But I do know it's not for everybody. There are some people that abuse it, but I think the quality in the work proves, who can do this and who can't. Like I said, I am way more productive than I've ever been. And I love it. Everything now, like trying to go back to work, I'm like, go travel again. All I'm thinking is the wasted time again. It's like, do I have to? But I get it. But I think if you have a good enough staff and the work shows that they're working, so if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Nice. Well put.
Now, many organizations struggle with the balance between innovation and stability. So how do you help clients determine the right pace of technological change for their specific business context?
That is an excellent question because especially nowadays, technologies are changing more rapidly than they ever have in the history of technology, and at least in this generation.
Right.
I'm sure every generation says that. There's a new AI model every week. There's a new this, a new that popping up. JavaScript frameworks are just the one that was the hotness 6 months ago has now been usurped by something new. And then you're always going to have the people in an organization who are chasing the newest and latest and greatest. And so if you do that, you're just in a constant state of chasing. You'll never actually reach that stability or, be able to fully take advantage of that innovation. So I think I always start with a a solid framework. You always start with understanding the problem that it is you're trying to solve and having a really solid, deep understanding of that and making sure everyone does as well. And then when you start to say, hey, we don't have a solution for that, then you start to collect requirements, whether they be business, operational, or from your chief stakeholders, which in DevOps is usually engineers. And then from those requirements, like technology choices come at the end, right? You have, your well understood problem, your requirements, your scope of what your solution is going to be, your set of possible solutions, and then you match those up, and then you out of that comes a winner. Sometimes it's not the newest. Sometimes it's something tried and true. If your requirements dictate that, then that's the right choice. And helping engineering teams understand that can be a struggle when they're saying, I want to use the latest and greatest for my own, career growth.
Right.
Because I can understand that, but the needs of the business may conflict with that, and so it's an interesting dichotomy, and you have to be really, aware of those issues, and you have to be really compassionate about them as well. But at the end of the day, it's a choice that everyone kind of together has to make, and so chasing the latest is not always the best use of everyone's time, and sometimes the newest thing just isn't for you, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as with everything, does it save time? Does it save money? And is it going to get the job completed in the fastest way possible? Because so many people want the latest and greatest, but, like you say, sometimes it's just not applicable for that specific thing. And that's okay. And then I know some people who are like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And they will never change. Meanwhile, there are things out there that can make your life easier, save you money. So you have to find someone who knows what they're doing, like yourself, and kind of help them make that decision. What's best for you,
Agreed. And then you mentioned stability. That's the thing, is if you're always chasing new tech, you'll never be stable. And also stability is a firm requirement, right? A lot of times, especially with central support teams who manage infrastructure, your, requirements are, uptime. And if you're constantly switching out technologies and having maintenance windows that, your uptime is suffering, the general knowledge of the team is always going to be in its infancy stage because it's new technology and they're not going to be able to fully support it. So you're going to have a resulting, set of downtime and mistakes along the way. So your stability is going to suffer if you're always in a constant change. And stability for all of my projects is one of the core requirements. Is we require 3 nines, or we require some sort of uptime. And if the new technology is not well understood, you're not going to meet that requirement.
Yeah, these are all things that people sometimes don't even take into consideration when they're, doing things. I always tell people, stay in your lane. If you run a business, then your business, do that. But if you handle the tech, you do that. If you handle the marketing, you do that. Because so many people might say, okay, yeah, no, latest and greatest. I seen this on the news, blah, blah, blah. I saw this commercial. Let's do it. But someone who's on the other side that knows everything that's involved in that might, like this, by the time you train this, it's going to change. Stay in your lane, let the people who know what they're doing, guide you on how to do this best.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, looking at your career directory from developer to DevOps leader, what was the most challenging transition? And what advice would you give to technical practitioners looking to make a similar journey?
See, that's interesting. Because originally I was sysadmin DBA and I was racking and stacking servers, and then I moved to Silicon Valley and was coding full time, and then that of course set up the expertise in both areas. And when the technology kind of was ripe in the late 2000s, DevOps was born. And for me, it was never an active transition. It was, I had the skill set that was required at the time, just like you said, stay in your lane. And I remember going to work I applied to a position at Playdom for a back-end engineer, and they quickly looked at my background and said, we need you to run operations. And it was me, the one operations guy, and 18 engineers. And it quickly became, how can I make these engineers' lives better, faster, easier? And that DevOps, right? So it was a conscious transition. It was very much a comfortable and organic one. And I'm not sure if other people have similar stories. I know that now DevOps is an established profession. People, straight out of college going to DevOps, they've never been a full-time coder or a full-time sysadmin. But I do see a lot in the industry of both engineers that, know operations pretty well, and they're very helpful. They're usually an ally, and that is a key component in, helping engineering organizations adopt to change by finding those and making them helping them. Like working with them closely because
Right.
they've realized the change, and usually they have already their trust relationship set up within the team. And same thing for operations, pure operations people. Most of them understand that, the old days of pure sysadmins and DBAs is kind of waning. And so they need to truly understand the complete ecosystem to remain current. So I think that I can't identify with anyone that's had a hard transition, but I've seen it, and I know that it depends all about your attitude. And just like almost any transition, if you're going to have a career change in your 40s, you're going to have a healthy attitude and understand there's a lot to learn, and you got to reset. And you don't have it all figured out. You may have in the past in another life, but this one's different. And it's just part of it. That's one of the core challenges as well when I've done consulting with companies, is coming in and actually helping the change management. And you have really sometimes, high performing, very intelligent people that are used to doing things their way. And when they are being tasked with adjusting their processes by someone who's come in and they have no idea who you are, they don't trust you, they don't know you, it can be a difficult, hurdle. And there's many ways to do it. And, it takes someone who's done it a few times to understand that. But transitions are hard. Change is hard, especially in high-performing engineering teams that have well-established both experienced and egos. So it can be a challenge, but like you said in the beginning, like nothing can be overcome. Just give me enough time.
Yeah. And, change in the whole world we're living in, things change every single day. And if you're not constantly evolving with it and learning, because I know some people who just set it and forget it, and they're good with that. Everything changes every single day. So if you're not constantly learning and evolving and keeping up with it, you're going to be left behind. And I think the sooner people start realizing it, the better they're going to be, because I am shocked at how fast things change nowadays. Years ago, it took, a couple months, couple years. Now it's like every day. It's like, wow, it's you have to be open. I'm not a big one for change either, but you have to learn. That's just part of life. Suck it up and deal with it. I mean, it's no other way to say it.
Absolutely.
Now, your profile mentions the consultant's playbook as a topic you're always ready to discuss. So what are the core principles of your consulting methodology that has proven most effective across different client engagements?
I think, and these questions are great because they're very applicable. One of the core things that I had to learn the hard way was don't come in acting like you know everything and that everyone's graced by your presence, right? It's not the case. Usually you can consider yourself a burden that they're being forced to deal with. Because if you come in with that mentality, even if it's not true, you're starting from a good place, because you're starting with humility and you're starting with understanding that the change is hard. So empathy on their part and just being very understanding of what it is that they're going through. And so that is a huge component. I've given talks before on when I gave last year's evolution versus revolution, right? Like change is not fast like a revolution, and because that's messy, sometimes people get their heads cut off in a guillotine. So evolution is important. Small change. People don't like big sweeping changes, and they certainly don't like it coming from someone they don't know or don't trust. So when you come into a consulting engagement, listening, understanding, and asking tons of questions, and things like, oh, how is this built? Okay, what were the conditions at the time that led to these decisions? And because a lot of times, people don't just make willy-nilly decisions that may not make sense now, but it certainly did at the time. So understanding that. And then the next core component is, if you are going to make change, involve everybody, because people want to be involved. They don't want to be told what to do. Even if you tell them why. It's like, okay, I understand it, but I really wanted to be part of that conversation. So nip that in the bud, make them part of that conversation in the beginning. Typically what I've done in consulting environments is meet people one-on-one and say, what's your biggest problems? Like, let me understand your problem set right now. And they're happy to share, more than happy to share that. And then when you get you collect enough information and you can start to, coalesce it, and you start to identify the really big problems, then you can talk about, hey, what's a good solution? Now you may have a good understanding of what you think is the solution, but you want to involve people, because if you don't and you just tell them, shove a solution down their throat, you're going to encounter resistance, and it's going to take much longer. And if, the chances of the success are going to be lower. So involve people early, make them feel like they're part of the solution, involve them in even implementation of the solution. This is, a lot of times as a consultant, I come in, I'm not actually making any changes. I'm consulting on the changes that need to be made. So the direct, stakeholders, the engineers themselves are the ones responsible for making the change. So you better make sure that they're on board with it.
Right.
So it's a game of compassion, empathy, and understanding. And people don't, they think in tech, there's, it's all about who knows the most and who's the smartest guy. That's not the case. It's usually the one who's got the highest EQ that is the most successful.
I do agree with making people feel included, because I remember way back in the day, going back many years ago, starting in the corporate world, you had a hierarchy of command, and the people on the bottom total, nobody cared about you. They didn't even know your name. You were just there to do a job, blah, 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 do it and go home. And as time was evolving, I remember we had managers come in and say we had a big company meeting, and they invited everybody in. And I remember being like, okay, who are these people? But we're here. And then they talk about stuff, and then they point to like me or somebody and say, well, what do you think of that? And then you're kind of like, me? Like, oh my God, like I would give what I thought about it. And they'd be like, well, that's pretty interesting. Maybe they'd agree, maybe they disagree, and explain why, blah, blah, blah. But that made me feel included. And I enjoyed I wanted to do more, and I wanted to prove myself, so you make people feel included. And now it's a win-win for everybody, because I'm going to dedicate 150% of myself now, because you actually know who I am now. You ask my opinion, like, wow, so I agree, especially if they're all part of the company. Everybody's part of a team. Your whole goal at the end of the day is the success of the company. So let's make it happen together.
Love it. That is, you nailed on something, or you spoke on something and absolutely nailed it. Is it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're part of a team. It's you get that, serotonin hit when something you said gets up on the board, and you're like, he heard me, like he actually heard me, or they heard me, whoever it may be, right?
Right.
Feeling.
Yeah. So that tells us, with the rapid advancement of AI tools in software development and operations, how do you see the role of human DevOps practitioners evolving over the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
I'd say 3 to 5 years is a very long outlook and how rapidly things are changing. And this is something I've been focusing on more and more, about the evolution of, say, DevOps into AI or AI ops or ML ops. But what I do see and what I do preach is what I said in the beginning, and I'll say it again now, is if you keep to the core principles and practices of, of operations and just of DevOps in general, you tend to, if you're comfortable with it, the input and the output are going to change, right? Because when you're supporting ML teams or AI teams, you're going to have to adapt, but you still are, understanding the problem, still listing out the requirements, and still scoping things. And your solutions are going to be different because new technologies and such, and new patterns. Infrastructure is hard because now you have inference and training environments. You also have bandwidth constraints in mind. If you have a 1 terabyte model that you are, is dynamically updating and growing at 2% every day, then you have to, build it on elastic infrastructure and, do some sort of projections, even though it's non-deterministic growth. So, things are complicated. They're getting more complicated, and we don't always have the solutions yet. But, looking back at the beginning of DevOps, I didn't have the solutions then. We figured it out, and we'll figure it out again. As long as you're adaptive and agile, and you kind of keep to the core components, and then just don't panic. Like, it's new, it's hard. But when someone comes to me with saying, hey, we have a new requirement, and it's X, Y, and Z, the answer is, okay, I'll put that down. And it's just another requirement. Now you may have to spend some time doing additional research because it's something new. You may even have to get it and play with it and really truly understand it, which may elongate the process. But again, like I also said in the beginning, if I got 6 weeks to build a boat, I'll take 5 because I need to understand where all the rivets go. So, a lot of that is the same. It can be intimidating, but also if you take a breath and just understand this is just another problem in a career full of problems that you have solved, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I went to a museum not that long ago, and it was ironic where they were just showing stuff like from the very first typewriter, or even like the very first washing machine, like how we lived without it, hand washing stuff and hanging, the whole world evolves so fast. And as frustrating and scary as it is, look at the history. It's going to make everybody's lives better, so you just have to just relax. Like you say, it's going to be okay. You just have to understand it, learn it, and, somewhere along, like with AI, it didn't happen overnight. It changes super fast, but it's learning along the way, and everybody's, influence on it is changing it to make it more suitable. And it's just part of life, So I guess, yeah, just relax, talk to people, network with people in the space, learn as much as you can, and constantly evolve, go along with it. And I think, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and as I've always thought this: if you're the core support, the rock, the foundation, the bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're shaky and you're unsure and you don't believe in yourself, no one else is either.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if there's a problem, prod is down, everyone's panicking, you're cool as a cucumber because you got to be, because everyone's looking at you to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing happens with, large scale solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it takes 18 months, this is a big project. Okay, no problem. I know this music. Break it down. Lots of small problems, planned it out. And then all of a sudden, at the other end of it, 6 weeks of planning, you've got 18 months of execution ready to go. Off you go.
Yeah. See, calm, cool, and collected. That's the ticket. So now, beyond the technical aspects, what organizational and cultural challenges do you find most critical to address when helping companies implement multi-cloud strategies?
Yeah, I think this is going to go back to the theme of just kind of the psychology game of it is, how do you tell a group of high-performing, very intelligent engineers that they, in fact, are not experts in what's about to come, right? Yeah. And you can't say it like that. Right. You have to, gently introduce these concepts. I love the pattern of having them come to conclusions on their own. Now, you may be gently leading them there, but if they come up and say like, well, it sounds to me like we need to be on more than one cloud. You're right. That's a really good idea. And, it's not manipulative per se, but you want to make sure that they understand all the reasons and all the possibilities. And if they come to the same conclusion, if you have an ally and a partner and you guys are going to be much better. I'm not sure if you know what the Iditarod race is, but it's it's a sled race, bunch of
okay.
And it's, multiple days, thousands of miles. And, you will never see a race where the musher is dragging his huskies across the line because, that's not a winning strategy. Right. The winning team is the one where all the dogs are going forward. They all know how to communicate. Everyone's kind of in their zone and they all understand the mission together. They have they're going to be the fastest and most streamlined team. Right. Engineering teams. If everyone is on board, everyone's pointing in the same direction and understand their role. This lead sled dog. Right. All the other ICs, you can draw your conclusions, your parallels to that. But the idea is the same. Everyone needs to be on the same page with that. So that is, that's a challenge. Organizational wise, for you to come in as let's just say any leader, right? Not even consultant, but a leader is getting everyone on board. And the culture change for that may be something along the lines of the culture is, mainly predominantly static, that they are change averse. And that is a cultural thing. And that that's a larger hurdle, but it's not insurmountable. I think it's all about the approach. And if you win the hearts and minds, you're going to have a lot better time. And all the aforementioned strategies about including them, making them feel heard, all that goes a long way for that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm always that person. Why? I want to know why, and people, I drive people nuts with that. But sometimes, if I just understand why you do something, maybe I'll agree, maybe I'll disagree, and I'll explain why. And maybe you'll tell me, I get what you're saying, but here's why. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't think of that. So I think including everybody and bouncing ideas and understanding why things are. And maybe you'll tell me something that I didn't even think of. And I'm like, I didn't even think about that. Let's try it. That might work. But if not, I still don't feel like you just brushed me aside because that's just the way it is. And that's that. You heard me. I heard you. And I think together we decided this was the best approach, whether it was your idea, my idea. But at the end of the day, you took the time to explain it to me. I understand. And, I think that, for any corporation, just hearing each other out and explaining why. That's why I love when they have meetings and they'll ask everybody's opinion. Then they'll explain that's a good idea. But we've done that before, and here's what happened, or, here's why we do it this way. And I'll be like, okay, that makes sense, So I do agree, and I just love the inclusivity of just including everybody and making everybody understand, Because you're all part of a team.
Absolutely. And just understanding basic psychology. If you have an ego, you're going to be met with ego. If you start to be demanding, you're going to be met with resistance. It's
Yeah.
it's a pretty simple thing. Like when I go to an organization, I'm humble. Like my intelligence actually doesn't matter. My ability to complete what I want to do is really the end result. And
Yeah.
be humble. Just be a lot of times just be quiet, listen,
Right.
and that goes way to a lot of times, especially if you're the one brought in to make change. Our people already have those walls up.
You're the enemy. Yeah. You're the enemy coming in.
So if you get out the cannons and think you're going to tear those walls down that way, you're going to be
Right.
you're in for a bad time. The
Yeah.
only way to pass those walls is to have the person on the other side lower them.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Now, anything else you want to add or talk about that we didn't already cover? Any upcoming things going on? Any books or anything?
No new books. I'm still plenty busy promoting this one. But yeah, I mean, just these are my contact links I'll give you as well. Please add me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to help out, do consulting work, or at least even talk about my dog goes crazy with the noises outside. But yeah, love to help, and this is something that I'm passionate about. And if anyone even just wants to have a conversation, reach out on LinkedIn and we'll talk.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Again, that was Adam Robertson. So never miss an episode by subscribing to the show, and be sure to click the bell notification to hear about future shows. So thank you again.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia, talking with some of the most brilliant minds on their journey to success and their recommended strategies. Please leave your feedback and visit pristineadvisors.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Feel free to let me know your thoughts, suggestions, and anything else you'd like me to cover. Together, we can make success happen for all.